I'm Dawn Moncrief, founding director of A Well-Fed World. We are a vegan hunger relief and animal protection organization. We work at chipping away at two of the most immense, unnecessary, and unconscionable forms of suffering: the suffering of people hungry from lack of food, and the suffering of animals used and abused for food.
It's often claimed that animal agriculture is the cause of world hunger, but some people say there's enough food to feed everyone. We sat down with Dawn Moncrief, the founding director of A Well-Fed World, to find out what she thought was the answer.
Yeah, you often hear that the problem is not scarcity, it's distribution, and these are not mutually exclusive, so they're actually connected. And when you say that there's not scarcity, because we have enough resources, but how are those resources being used? And a lot of those resources are being funneled into animal feed very inefficiently to create meat and other animal products for wealthier populations. And so then there's regional and localized food scarcity and hunger. And by regionalized, though, I mean country in massive parts of countries and continents. Africa, for example, has the highest per capita amounts of hunger in the world. Asia, the largest population in aggregate. Huge swaths of hunger, and a lot of times when you talk about scarcity, it makes it sound like if the problem is distribution and not scarcity, that it's maybe an infrastructure problem. But that's not the case. It's a redistribution. So scarcity is a problem in the sense that those resources are being redistributed for animal feed. You'll also hear concerns about food waste and biofuels. So if scarcity wasn't an issue, why would people be concerned about crops being redistributed towards biofuels? Why would people be concerned about food waste? You don't hear people saying, oh, there's enough food, we don't care about food waste. There's plenty. No. But when it comes to livestock products, then they do care, because then you're coming after their food choices. And it's much easier to say, oh, I'll choose ugly produce and look how good I'm doing, while still eating animal-based foods. So still eating their hamburger and their chicken because they already did their good deed by having an ugly tomato. And so we really just need to look at what we're talking about, and if we're using that as an excuse. And if scarcity really wasn't an issue because there's enough calories, there are enough calories, it's just that they're being funneled into animal feed and inefficiently used to make meat and other animal products. But if, say, we did have enough for all the animal products and all the staple crops and foods that people eat directly, even right now we have a growing population and we have increasingly scarce resources. As we urbanize, we lose land. We are losing land for crops, for feed crops, for grazing. We're having natural resource issues in terms of water, energy, land, and then you're also having these climate problems where you're coming in and having decreased crop yields because of the changing temperatures and climate-intensified natural disasters. So we always want to be concerned about the amount of crops, the quantity of crops, whether there's scarcity or not scarcity, and then the distribution. So scarcity is an issue in that we do have a limited amount of crops that we can process and natural resources that we can use.
You mentioned the two different kind of mindsets of people in terms of animal agriculture and having enough food. How do you bring them kind of two communities together?
Well, one of the points to your other point is that having a plant-based food system is not going to solve world hunger. So sometimes there is discussion and it makes it sound like just having enough crops will feed the world's population. So there has to be a political will. So it's important to not overstate it, that having a plant-based food system means not having hunger, but it needs to be part of the solution. We have a massive increase of meat consumption and dairy and eggs as well globally. It's set to double over 50 years with a 2,000-year time base from 2000 to 2050. And we had 50 billion animals, land animals, being slaughtered for food in around 2000, and now we're at about 75 billion, so we are on track to double over 50 years, and that's just highly unsustainable, and there's all kinds of concerns around that. And so we need to at least reverse the trend, and there needs to be a global agreement on reversing that trend of increasing meat consumption and start reducing it and really putting downward pressure on a global level to reduction. And even if you can't have everyone on the same page as far as being supportive of a plant-based diet for everyone, then at least looking at massive reductions on a global scale and individually for high consumers. So people who are in high income countries and have high levels of consumption of animal products have a lot to do that we can reduce our consumption and take up more of only our fair share of global resources in terms of food crops. When you think of meat, for example, it's actually a form of overconsumption in itself, because if you have a 100-calorie hamburger patty, that's easily 2,500 calories of global crops being used. And so that's just, it's not a fair share. And if you think of it that way, it's a form of waste, a redistribution, and overconsumption, and it's a way we can just be more responsible global citizens.
Don't forget to follow us on social media via YouTube, Instagram and Twitter. For the latest vegan news and exclusives, keep it VGN.